fly up and down the Hudson. But airliners routinely do not do that.
Richard, would you just stand by 1 second, please? Sure. I just want to tell the folks one thing, and that is the city fire department has now issued a request to all the members of the department, all firefighters, whether you're on your day off or whether you're on vacation. They're asking that you return to duty, that you go to your firehouse and report for duty. So the city is asking all firefighters, whether you're on vacation or whether you're on your day off or whatever, to return to your firehouse and report for duty. I'm sorry, Richard, are you still there?
Yes.
All right, Dave's got a question for you.
Richard, can you do me a favor and take us through exactly what happens as a plane takes off and circulates around that area? What contact they would typically have with the FAA or the tower at LaGuardia, Kennedy, or Newark? And exactly what would appear on a radar screen to those tracking aircraft in the area?
Well, let's say if you were taking off in a relatively small plane, say a twin-engine plane or a private aircraft, and you were coming in from the south, which apparently these came from. If they have specific areas, if you're coming in, let's say you were 20 miles out, there's no requirement that you be in radar contact with anyone or radio.
Now, Richard, I'm going to jump in. What if it were a larger aircraft? Because at least on that second hit to us, it appeared as if that was at least a twin-engine jet. What if you're a commercial aircraft?
Even a commercial aircraft is not required to always be on an instrument flight plan. They could take off what they call VFR flight rules, come up the New Jersey coast, and when they got within, say, 10 miles of New York City, they'd have to drop down below 1,600 feet. And VFR, they'd have to then drop down when they got to the Verrazano Bridge. They'd have to be below 1,100 feet.
My question is this. Would folks who are manning a tower, would personnel at the airports early on or relatively early on spot something alarming, that something that big was below a certain altitude or near one of these skyscrapers?
No, they wouldn't. If they came up from the south and they came up below those altitudes, even if they had their altitude reporting on, since they're below the level of where they control the airplanes, they wouldn't pay it any attention. They wouldn't have to, and normally it's not done. And realize that this is an extraordinary circumstance where apparently these planes appear to have been hijacked in some way or taken the control over them, and it basically must have been a suicide mission. Most of these aircraft accidents, when you look at them, most pilots can tell what really happened very quickly, even though the reports take a long time to come out. But the controllers, let's say the controllers that are actually controlling the airliners,
Richard, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. I apologize to you, Richard, but we have another development.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your assistance. I appreciate it. Dick Oliver?
Yes, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Jim, I can tell you now that the police for the last several minutes have been evacuating all of lower Manhattan. I'm standing at the foot of City Hall Park, and I see people being screaming out of the lower Manhattan area. I'm looking down Broadway, and they're encouraged, move, please move. Please move. And they're moving them north towards the up Broadway and towards the Brooklyn Bridge. So virtually all of lower Manhattan is being evacuated at this time. All people except for emergency personnel are being asked to leave the area.
Ollie, that may tie in with another, I must emphasize, unconfirmed report that we have that there is yet another plane on its way. So, Lord knows we hope that is not the case, but we do have an unconfirmed report that another plane might be on its way. We have an eyewitness from our own staff. Hi, kid, how you doing?
Hi, Jim. I was in my apartment. I live on the 36th floor at 59th Street in Columbus, and I have a clear view of downtown, and I can see the towers. And I was in my living room. I was getting dressed to rush in here, and I saw one tower. It had all the smoke. And then I saw another plane that was really close, and it went behind, and you can see it doing a turn. It was turning its wings, and it went around, and then I saw it go into the other tower, and I saw a big pool of flames just come out, and there was a big explosion. I didn't hear anything, because I'm at 59th Street, but you could see it. And there were flames, and there was so much smoke. And you can see that it was an entire different building. But I saw it. It was a different plane.
So two different planes?
Absolutely.
Now, when you left your building, you went downstairs to come in here. What kind of a reaction did you encounter on the streets? Were people aware of it? Were people frightened by it?
Absolutely, people are aware of it. I mean, just walking here, I was hearing people saying, you know, it was one plane, it was two plane, and everyone was hearing sirens. And people, I know people were trying to use their cell phones. No one could get a cell out. And my taxi driver was talking about it. And he had the radio up, and he was, when we would stop, he would put his window down and tell the other guy. So everybody knows about it, I think, at this point, and they're talking about it.
Deb, we just got word that from the Associated Press that it's pretty sure now that one of those planes, the first one to hit, was hijacked after takeoff from Boston. So that word we have just in. The first plane that hit the World Trade Center, the North Tower, was hijacked en route from Boston, and presumably that's a commercial jet, and there were people on board as well. So this is nothing but a terrible tragedy. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Deb. You were
That's
saying.
okay. I can just say that that plane that I saw, the second plane, that was definitely a larger plane. I can't say which kind, but that was not a small plane. That was definitely a large plane.
So the first one was large enough, and the second one was much larger.
Well, I didn't see the first one. I can just vouch for the one I saw, and that one was certainly a large plane.
When you saw the plane, though, did you get a sense that it was heading directly for the building?
You know, when I saw it, I was thinking, gosh, you know, that's really low. I thought it was part of the, of the recovery effort. And then I saw it, make a turn, and I was wondering what it would be doing, but then I saw it come around and hit the other side, and then huge flames, huge flames.
Deb, I'm going to have to interrupt you, I'm afraid, but the dimensions of this catastrophe are growing. We are told now that this is not quite confirmed yet, but we are told fairly reliably that a plane has crashed into the Pentagon in Washington. So not only have we had a terrible catastrophe here in New York, where planes crashed into both towers of the World Trade Center, but we are told now that a plane has crashed into the military complex in Washington, the Pentagon, which of course houses the nerve center of all the military operations of this country. So a 1, 2, 3 attack on the United States apparently today. 2 here in New York and 1 in Washington at the Pentagon. There you see a live picture from Washington. We would have to guess that that smoke is emanating from the Pentagon in the background. So the military nerve center of this country has been attacked by terrorists. And because of that, we are told that the White House has now been evacuated.
Explosions at the World Trade Center here in New York, where 2 planes slammed into the buildings.
I would imagine.
Okay, that's the picture in Washington. So now we can say with certainty that there have been at least 3 attacks on visible symbols of our country. 2 here in New York and 1 in Washington. You're looking at 2 different views of the World Trade Center, where planes, first one tower and then another plane, a larger plane, into the other tower, crashed just before and after 9 o'clock, and then just moments ago, a 3rd plane crashed into the Pentagon, which, as you know, houses the nerve center of our military might, and that certainly is an unprecedented attack upon this country. One would presume by suicidal terrorists, and I imagine we'll find out soon enough who staged this attack and what will be done about it.
We're getting something on the wire also about the stock exchange, which planned to open this morning at 10. Is delaying a half an hour, so we've got developments all over the place. And I don't know about your computers now. I'm starting to have a problem with my computer. It is just randomly jumping from one story to the other.
Given going forward, as there are, I think, stories are incoming on a very rapid basis. So that would be the.
Given what we're seeing at this point, I would imagine major buildings in major cities, from the Sears Tower in Chicago to other symbols, as you mentioned, Jim, in Washington and Boston, I would imagine are all going to be on high alert, if not evacuated in Washington.
The west wing of the White House and the Capitol building have both been evacuated.
Okay, so in Washington, just to recap now, on this terrible, terrible day, here in New York, you happen to be looking at a picture in Washington, so we'll start with that. That's in Washington, a plane has struck the Pentagon in Washington, and that, of course, houses our military nerve center, and that has taken place, and the Pentagon now obviously being evacuated. The west wing of the White House is being evacuated, and here in New York, 2 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. A plane deliberately smashed into the upper floors, first of one tower, and then several minutes later, the other tower. 2 large planes. We understand the second one, or the first one rather, was hijacked from Boston and presumably loaded with passengers. So as a consequence of these terrorist attacks here in New York, we have the island of Manhattan virtually isolated. You cannot get in or out of Manhattan by any bridge or any tunnel, and any subway train that goes anywhere near the World Trade Center is not running. All right, Dick Oliver was fairly close to the scene when it happened. He was reporting on what is now an afterthought to this day, the primary election, down at City Hall when the blasts took place. Ollie? I don't know if Ollie is... again, our part of our television operation is on top of the World Trade Center, so we lost the picture. Yes, you're coming to us by phone. Ollie?
Yeah, Jim, I hear you now. I'm down by the Brooklyn Bridge now, where people are streaming over the bridge, heading towards Brooklyn, obviously. The police are encouraging people to get out of lower Manhattan. So that's going on now. There are some cars being permitted to clear away to allow more and more pedestrians to get over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Is there any vehicular traffic on the bridge, Ollie?
There's just a little bit coming off on the side ramps. The south ramp has some traffic on it, but that's going very, very slowly. The pedestrians have taken over the entire bridge, almost the entire bridge. Now, as far as the first blast is concerned, I did hear some kind of a scream, just a split second before that tremendous blast. And I did not know it was an aircraft. I did not know what it was. But you were able to confirm what happened with the second explosion in the second tower.
Ollie, let me just interrupt you for a second, if I may. We are told now that the White House has been threatened with a terrorist attack. Maybe some sort of a verbal threat, I don't know, but one would assume that the White House, given the fact that the Pentagon was under attack, and these World Trade Center was under attack, this country is under attack by terrorists, both here in New York and in Washington. And just moments ago, the President of the United States went in before the nation to make this announcement. I understand we're going to rerun the bite of the President. Okay, here it is.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence.
All right, that was the President just a few minutes ago announcing that the full resources of the government would be put to help the victims of these tragedies and to and to find out who did it. And I'm also told now that the FAA has announced from Washington that no aircraft anywhere in the country is being allowed to take off. That's from the FAA, because apparently these two planes that smashed into the World Trade Center, and perhaps the one in the Pentagon as well, were hijacked commercial jets from various airports. So, as a result of that, the FAA has announced that no aircraft is being allowed to take off anywhere in the country.
All right, Jim, we do have someone who has just joined us on the set here. His name is Joseph Jaffe. And Mr. Jaffe, where are you from?
Decision Strategies Fairfax. We're an investigative consulting and security firm.
All right.
What do you make of this?
Well, it's a tragedy, and it appears, if it didn't appear first from the first plane, after the second plane, and now the one at the Pentagon, that there's a well-coordinated effort afoot to bring terrorism to the United States.
What could have been done, if anything, to prevent this kind of an attack?
At this juncture, it's very hard to guess. We have a country that's wide open. We have borders that are wide open. We have freedoms that are wide open. And over the past 25 and 30 years, some of us have been following terrorism for at least that long. Our country does not generally get into the investigation of terrorism the way it ought to, in terms of being the state that could prevent it. We value our freedom more, so there's very little you can do to take a person who's bent on killing himself or herself from taking over a plane. I mean, of course, you could enforce measures and be very strict on who gets onto what planes and how that would work. But that isn't going to work in this country.
I'm told, Mr. Jaffe, that we have is it a picture of the Pentagon? Let's just take a. This is a picture of the central military headquarters of our country, the Pentagon of the United States.
Apparently, the president.
This is the president's plane taking off from Florida, where he had been heading back to Washington to deal with the emergency. Mr. Jaffe, Dave, you had a question?
Well, two things. Number one, I was going to ask Mr. Jaffe. You said you're either based out of Fairfax or your company is down.
We have our company's in New York and in Falls Church, Virginia.
Okay, Falls Church, Virginia. You would very well know, as anyone who flies into the Washington area, what's stunning about the Pentagon attack is the airspace. While we do have a wide open country, the airspace around the Pentagon, the White House, the national monuments down there is extremely restricted. So number one, does it surprise you that an aircraft was able to get into, literally right into, the Pentagon? And number two, does it surprise you, since the attack on the World Trade Center back in the early 90s, that this has taken so long for terrorism to once again return to our domestic locale?
If you recall, over the last few years, there have been a number of people interdicted coming out of Canada, coming out of Brunswick, coming across various parts of the northern country, where people have been caught with the components to make the bombs. So it doesn't surprise me that we are the target of an attack. It surprises me that it's taken as long for us to suffer what we've suffered, and it creates a very heightened awareness of what we have to do now. The question becomes, do we sacrifice our complete freedoms in order to not suffer this? There's got to be a balance. But
I'm just interrupt you for a second, Mr. Jaffe. Just want to report to our viewers that we have reports now that the Capitol and the Treasury and the White House are being evacuated in Washington. Continue your thoughts, sir.
Have we been looking in the wrong places? We've been looking at terrorism in other areas. Have we been looking at them and neglecting our own backyard?
You could surmise that. Years ago, there were a whole host of different groups that started with the Francis Tavern bombing, LaGuardia bombing, and others which we worked on. And then there was a very complete effort, at least in New York City and other places, to penetrate those organizations. I can't speak of what's been ongoing recently as to what we've penetrated, but we might have to sacrifice some of what we have by way of rights, at least to allow intelligence to be gathered so we can prevent some type of tragedy such as this. We need to look at home.
Apparently we got blindsided by this one. We were looking at a picture now. The one on the left is the Pentagon, and the one on the right is the World Trade Center. What, if you could take an educated guess, Mr. Jaffe, and say what kind of What kind of restrictions will now be placed upon the citizens of this country in order to combat terrorists, things like this?
Well, if we look at airports, our security is probably not the highest of all the countries in the world. And if we're worried about planes and commercial planes and hijacking, we could increase the types of things we did when the hijackings were so prevalent. But if we're looking at small planes and other things, it's very hard to stop that.
Now, watching terrorism as you have for as long as you have, is it odd that at this point, and maybe we have and simply don't know, that we don't have a name tag attached, a claim attached, a political group attached to what has happened within the last 2 hours or so? And what is the aim then, if it is not immediately to say, we did this, this is our cause?
I don't think it's odd. I think depending on who it is that's involved, they may have different reasons for deciding when to go public. But you don't need a claim. The purpose of terrorism, at least here, is to do just that, to get the people unnerved, to get business unsettled, to get the country totally taken apart and worried. And to that extent, right now, that appears successful. The city is worried.
We are a nation right now worried. The FAA has shut down all airplane traffic nationwide. We are paralyzed as a nation right now. I mean, of course, people can get in their cars and drive, but no one can fly, and I'm surprised that we haven't heard anything about the railways.
Well, I don't know. I understand, at least in our city, the subways, at least some of the lines are now closed. I think people have trepidation about going underground. They don't want to be there.
Absolutely.
If we suffer a short-term setback because we need to increase the security, we won't be a paralyzed country. If we go through and say we can't move, then the terrorism will have its effect. And so the thing that we have to do is literally not panic, see that it's a disaster to some extent, and go on with business. Because if we don't, then the acts that they've now done, I mean, the World Trade Center's been targeted before, it's been hit before, and for a short term, if you recall, the city was paralyzed then. We can't allow ourselves to be paralyzed. That would just give in and create the effect they want.
They've hit the Pentagon. The White House is being evacuated.
I would assume that most structures of any moment and most tunnels of any moment in any place...
Take a look at that, if you would, Mr. Jaffe. That's the live picture of the Pentagon having been hit by an attack. Again, in Washington, they're told no, that's not the Pentagon. No,
we just heard that there was another explosion in the basement or one of the lower levels of the World Trade Center.
Well, that would it would seem from that picture that you're right there, Dave, because we see.
From the bottom.
We don't know if that's anything that's fallout from the planes striking doing.
Yeah.
News coverage event.
Could be as a consequence of perhaps something falling from, but it certainly looks like an awful lot of smoke to be.
And we are now, for the first time, beginning to get some pictures of people in the streets.
Yeah, this is our live picture from the scene. Now we saw earlier the smoke. It's considerably less black than it was a few minutes ago, indicating that they're making some progress in putting those flames out. But now there seems to be a lot of smoke coming from the lower portion of the World Trade Center. And again, we had a report.
A new black smoke.
We had a report indicating that there was an explosion on the lower floors now.
We were talking.
Perhaps,
sorry, James.
We can't communicate with Dick Oliver. He is down somewhere in that area, but the only audio contact we have with him is by cell telephone, and we're having problems with those as well. So there's a live picture. All right, Brandy, are you on the phone?
I am, sir.
Brandy, where are you now?
I am in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. I live on the 15th floor.
Yeah.
I have a terrace that faces the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
If I am home and all of the lights are on, if one floor turns out all of their lights, I can see that one floor turn out. I can see everything. I was in my bed this morning. My whole building shook. I got up, looked to see what was going on. Everything was up in flames. 10 minutes later, not literally, the other plane, I swear to you, deliberately went into the next World Trade Center building. Deliberately. It was no mistake about it. It deliberately went in there. I have a clear view of everything. Just 2 seconds ago, half of the building just fell out. There's nothing but white smoke. I can no longer see the World Trade Center now. It's all up in smoke. The smoke is on my terrace. That's how close I am. My mom is coughing because the smoke is on my terrace.
And you're across the bay in Brooklyn.
I'm across the bay in Brooklyn. I can see everything. We're in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn. This is the scariest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It was like television.
Now, when you say it seemed as if the side had fallen off the building?
The side of the building has fallen out. It seemed like there was another explosion. I heard something go boom, and everything just like fell out.
Is that a third explosion now?
I don't know if it was the third explosion or was it from the fire. The fire.
No, you saw you heard the first explosion, and you saw the second plane go in.
I saw the second plane go in, and it was actual deliberate. There was no way as a pilot that you would not drive around that smoke.
Brandy, after you saw that second plane hit deliberately, as you say, the side of the World Trade Center, then you heard a third explosion?
Then I heard, not necessarily a third explosion, just 10 minutes ago, like a whole side of the building just fell out.
I see.
And I could hear like the rumble, the crash of all the windows coming down.
So that could indicate some sort of a weakness, the
right.
structure of the building weakened.
I can't even see the World Trade Center building.
It's too much covered with smoke.
It's too much covered with smoke.
I see. Well,
I mean, the smoke is coming on my terrace. That's how much smoke it is.
I see. Brandy, thank you very much. I'm sure it was a harrowing experience for you, so thank you for sharing your experiences with us. I appreciate it. Mr. Jaffe, your firm again is?
Decision Strategies, Fairfax.
Decision Strategies. As we look at a picture of the smoke coming from the Pentagon building in Washington, we now head into perhaps a new era in this country as far as protection against terrorist activity is concerned. Do you think that's a fair statement?
I think we're going to have a very heightened awareness. I think we have to in terms of protecting the things that are basic to us. I think we have to be careful, though, not to overdo it to the point that we wind up compromising completely what we've come to expect. If we overreact and take away the basic liberties we need, we'll have a problem. On the other hand, we can be very, very concerned, very concise, and do what we need to do and still be respectful of what the country stands for. But the most important piece, I think.
Okay, I'm sorry for interrupting you all the time, but what we heard from Brandy just a few minutes ago apparently has now been confirmed that a portion of the side of the World Trade Center has indeed collapsed. Now, whether that's just the outer wall or whether that goes right into the offices, I don't know. But you're looking at a live picture there, and smoke is emanating from the entire building. And we had Brandy on the phone just a short time ago from Brooklyn, and she said that she heard some sort of, she didn't know whether it was an explosion or not, but certainly a very loud sound. And then the side of the building, she said, just gave way. And you see all the smoke. Now, she says from her vantage point in Brooklyn, all she can see is smoke. Brandy, are you still with us by any chance? Yeah, apparently she's we're joined by Rosanna Scotto. Good morning, Rosanna.
Morning, Jim. You know, we knew we were going to have a big day today with the primaries. That has obviously taken a back seat right now. What we are hearing is the Board of Elections are meeting right now to determine whether to call off the primary today. And this is unprecedented. This has never happened. Now, if it was a general election, there is stipulations in the charter which say some kind of act of that we don't know of in nature, you can call it off. But for a primary, there's nothing in the charter that says you can call it off. But obviously, there are a lot of polling stations down in that area of the World Trade Center, and if not inside the Trade Center, and obviously those are closed right now. So we will know in the next hour or so whether the primary has been postponed for a day or so.
Yeah, I don't see how they could go forward with it.
No, not at all, because it lost its
that would be a long
place,
shot.
yeah.
And certainly only from the standpoint of, if not from the standpoint of polling places being closed, but from people losing interest in an election or in the face of an overwhelming tragedy.
I just left my home to come here, and it's really kind of scary because all you hear are the constant screams of ambulances and fire trucks racing through the street. anybody, you know, I was walking trying to get to a bus or a taxi or anything to get here, and all anybody could talk about was, what's going on? Do you have any information? It is the talk of the town right now, and rightly so. My husband, as you know, works down near the World Trade Center. He called me a little after 9 o'clock this morning. He had just gotten into his building. He was walking up the steps, and he heard a loud bang. He said it felt like an earthquake, and all of a sudden, he said it looked like confetti coming from the sky. Now, he's a few blocks away. And he didn't know what it was. He went up into his office. He has a clear view of the World Trade Center from there. And he claims he saw either people falling out of the building or jumping out of the building this morning. And my husband is pretty unflappable. He's an attorney. He was shaken up this morning.
Excuse me 1 second, Rosanna, because I think we're about to see a picture of, this is a few moments ago. Watch this. This is the side of the building just collapsing. There you see. There you see. Now, whether that is the result of just further weakening of the structure of the building, or whether that's yet another terrorist attack, I don't know. I would imagine the former, that the building structure just weakens to the point where the wall, no longer able to sustain the weight, just caved. But that was the east side of the north tower of the World Trade Center caving in. And just a few moments ago, we had a woman named Brandy on the phone, and she told us it was another loud roar, and she told us also, this is Kai, can you hear me? Kai, tell us what we're looking at here. These are fighter jets, one would presume, to prevent any further attacks by planes. If they see any plane coming now, it better not be an innocent commercial flight, because I should imagine those fighter jets are up there to intercept and shoot down any plane that comes their way.
No, I think everything has been grounded.
That's
by
right.
the
all the airports across the country have been closed. And I heard that right now they're inspecting, and really inspecting, Air Force One, because it's been around this morning, and before the president gets on it, they want to make sure that it's a safe plane to get on.
Okay.
Okay. This is Chopper 5 to Corporon and Wolf. Corporon and Wolf. The studio is requesting exact locations from you guys. They want to know where you are.
Kai, can you hear me? Kai Simonson? We're getting audio from Kai, but apparently he cannot hear me. If somebody can tell him to tell us what he sees from his vantage point and what's going on up in the air there, we'd appreciate it. Yeah.
This is Chopper 5 to Corporon and Wolf. Corporon and Wolf. What are your locations?
All right. He's talking to the assignment folks here at Channel 5, trying to set up some sort of contact. So apparently we can hear him, but he cannot hear us. So we have no way to tell him to talk to us.
Well, a lot of our communication stuff is on top of the World Trade Center.
Yep.
So I imagine all TV stations, all cell phones, all that stuff that we rely on every day are, you know, a big problem right now.
There's some of the folks standing on the ground wondering what to make of all this. Again, shortly before 9 o'clock this morning, the first of 3 terrorist attacks on this country, 2 here in New York, 1 in Washington. A plane slammed into the upper floors of the North Tower of the World Trade Center, and then a few minutes later, another plane, pretty large planes as well.
You sit here and you look at this, and
just one second.
Right ahead,
that second explosion took place when the second plane went in. Then a third explosion took place at the Pentagon, and now there are unconfirmed reports that a fourth explosion, the second at the Pentagon, has also taken place. So we're flying by the seat of our pants here, trying to keep up with this terrible terrorist activity. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, not at all, James. I'm just saying, you sit here and you look at this, and as journalists, you are not supposed to inject any of your personal feelings. But I'm sitting here, I'm looking at this, and I'm mad as hell. I really am. I am so angry that something like this could take place in our country.
Disrupt our lives, yeah.
Well, I think it's also frightening. I mean, let's face it, we're journalists, but we also live in this city.
Thank you.
We have children that we're raising in this city, so we have concerns just like everybody else, and we want to keep this place safe. And who would think in our lifetime that we would see something like this?
Yeah. Should we have been aware of this, Mr. Jaffe? Should we have been some inkling? Because apparently we got blindsided here.
I would think, and the government has various motives, and each of the various pieces of the government have other intelligence sources, but I would hope that we would be on top of some of this. And in years past, sometimes we weren't, sometimes we weren't, but at least we had an inkling. It seems to me one of the things we have to do is to increase our intelligence gathering faculties domestically as well as overseas, especially domestically. And that may frighten some people because they don't want to have their rights compromised. On the other hand, we have to give up something in order to be safe. To the extent that they've accomplished our becoming fearful and you becoming angry, they've created a situation we have to rectify, and we have to do it quickly.
Do you think the FBI is going to come under a lot of fire for letting something like this slip? This obviously seems like a well-planned attack on New York and Washington, and we don't know.
Allow me to interrupt you, please. This is Rick Leventhal with Fox News Channel.
The smoke is obviously cleared somewhat. Ma'am, she's with DCPI. Can you talk to us for just a second? Bring us up to speed. Obviously, people have their hands full out here. It's not easy getting anyone to talk. Yeah, tell me where you were. What happened? What did you see? What did you hear?
First, I went on Canal Street. I saw the fire. I saw the two buildings. I'm thinking it was a bomb because it's two of them. Anyway, when I got there, I tried to save people because I'm a doctor. When I tried to save people, in the moment we heard a big explosion coming down. Everything just went black. Everything came down, glass started popping. People got hurt. Stuff went on top of them. And it was a big explosion, and everything got dark, real dark, like snow. You can see behind me, oh, this is not snow, this is all from the building. It was a terrible nightmare.
Where exactly were you standing when this happened?
I was standing right in front of the World Trade Center.
So you were down the block here? And
right
you came
there in the
running
middle,
this way?
right, yeah.
Did you get hurt at all?
No, not me.
Did you see anyone around you getting caught up in it?
Yeah, I was with the firemen, we got hurt, we all went inside to this dark, we was inside the building when everything happened, but we came out alive.
What's your name?
My name is Dr. Angel.
Were you able to assist anyone before this happened?
Yes, I did. I help a lot of patients, a lot of them.
Well, there are a lot more people that need help now.
Need help,
so
yeah.
if you're capable, maybe you should...
yes, I'm going to go back. I lost my ID, but I try to go back.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for talking to us.
Thank you.
We, can you talk to us for a second? Jesus, just... Huh?
I saw a trade center come down.
Well, tell me what you saw.
All right, I was coming down 6th Avenue, running down to meet this truck.
Pat Muskoff, Fox News engineer. Go ahead, go ahead. Start again.
I'm coming down 6th Avenue. All the traffic was running up. And I'm looking up, I'm trying to call the station, trying to find where we are. And I look up and the tower just starts crumbling down. And everybody in the street just stops and started crying and bawling. And I'm standing next to a fireman, he said, yeah, they just bombed the Pentagon too. So that's basically where I saw. Then I came running down here. Traffic's not allowed past Warren Street, and you see what's here.
Do you know which of the two towers?
The one without the main antenna on it. The second one that was hit.
That's the further south? This more southerly tower?
I think it's Tower 1. I'm not too sure the exact.
And you actually saw it from the top down collapsing?
I saw it come it came sideways like this, just collapsing on top of itself. It was amazing, but very upsetting to watch the whole thing come tumbling down. So we all thought it was another explosion, and then we looked up. Instead of being two, there's one.
Just an unbelievable
scene
here. It's almost difficult to describe what's going on here. It's unbelievable. You can see that we have one World Trade Center completely engulfed in flames. The upper floor is completely engulfed in flames. Two World Trade Center has collapsed. It collapsed, I guess, about 15 minutes or so ago. We had two planes, as you've been hearing. One plane hit One World Trade a short time ago. I guess it's going back about 45 minutes to maybe to an hour or so ago. And then shortly after that, another plane. We actually witnessed the plane coming up the East River, and it seemed to be getting dangerously close to World Trade, and we thought that it was going to hit, and it did in fact hit. We saw the explosion and all of the debris flowing down toward the lower Manhattan there, and it's just incredible how right now what we see on the ground down here is that the entire area of lower Manhattan right now is completely engulfed in a big black cloud of smoke. Now we did have some people down there that were shooting some tape for us. They said that The entire area is completely engulfed in smoke right now. It's very, very difficult to see at this point. And right now, our concerns in terms of what we're doing up here is that the area, as we understand it, has been sealed off. The airspace has been sealed off. So they are not allowing people to come in and out of the airspace at this point. We are able to stay here right now, but no commercial traffic is being allowed to exit or enter the airspace right now. And we did hear some reports that there were hundreds of people. We did hear reports that there were hundreds of people, if not more, on the ground that were injured. There are obviously numerous casualties involved in all of this. Now, in terms of flying right now, our concern right now is just basically keep an eye out for any planes, any suspicious planes that enter the airspace. Right now, by definition, any plane that we see enter the airspace, if it's not an American fighter jet, which we have seen, or if it's not a news helicopter or a police helicopter, is suspicious at this point, and we need to get out of their way.
77th floor in One World Trade. You were in the building?
Yes. We did not see the debris hit anything specific on the ground because we are being kept at a distance right now. We're being kept at 3-4 miles away. Actually, I'm being told now by my pilot we're being kept at a minimum of a 5-mile radius of the World Trade Center. That is for our own safety and also for the safety of the people on the ground. The debris, it's very, very difficult to determine which way the debris fell. It may have fallen toward the east, but I'm really not sure at this point which way the building collapsed. It was very difficult to see. It kind of erupted in a big cloud of dust and smoke at this point, so it was very difficult to see which way the debris fell, but it did appear that it may have fallen over toward the east side of the island. You can see it's an incredible scene here. It's almost the entire southern tip of Manhattan completely engulfed in smoke at this point. And we are told that it is virtually impossible to see down there. I can only imagine what emergency crews are going through at this point, not being able to see, trying to fight a fire. Right now, it's just kind of a moot point. Basically, I would think that right now the priority is just to preserve life at this point. The fire continues to burn at the top of One World Trade. 2 World Trade, as I told you a little bit earlier, collapsed, and it appeared as though it was collapsing over toward the east side of the island, but that has not been confirmed. I can't be sure of that completely. But just an incredible scene out here. It's really almost difficult to describe.
Again, the words of Kai Simonson, who is up in the air in Chapter 5. He was up in the air with his camera focused on the building when the second plane rammed into the World Trade Center, and it must have been it must have been quite a sight for him and quite an experience.
So, Jim,
I'm told Mario Bosques, excuse me, Rosanna, but I'm told Mario Bosques is on the phone from Beth Israel Hospital. Mario?
Hello, Jim. I'm at Beth Israel Medical Center, as you said, in downtown Manhattan. On the east side, along with Bellevue Medical Center, has become a staging area to receive the injured, the victims from, of course, the World Trade Center situation, the tragedy that took place there. We are seeing many ambulances pulling up with people coming on wheelchairs and stretchers, bandaged about the head and arms and legs. They don't appear at this point to be major injuries, but they appear to be stunned as they're taken out of the hospital, out of the ambulance into the hospital. We understand Bellevue at this point is also receiving people, doing triage there as well. Again, Beth Israel and Bellevue taking in victims apparently from the World Trade Center. In addition, Jim, people on the streets, I can tell you, along First Avenue walking around totally stunned. The TV sets in some shops are turned on loud, pointed out toward the streets as people come out of their apartments to watch these developments as they unfold. But again, at Beth Israel, they have many ambulances that are standing by to go to the area. We also understand Beekman Hospital is where many of the injured. I was running my way there to try to get coverage there when I stopped at Beth Israel to get the situation here. And as you might imagine, medical personnel are running around the area preparing to take in more victims.
I'm sure they will. By the way, I should tell the viewers, Mario, that you're looking at the picture on Fox News Channel. They have a reporter on the ground. Perhaps we could listen to that interview.
It's in the World Financial Center. Right across the street. World Financial Center is right across the street from the Marriott Hotel. And when we were walking by, you look at the Marriott Hotel, I don't even think it's there anymore. So, well.
I don't know what else to ask you. I mean, it's just an incredible story. It's just horrible.
It's an absolute shame.
Do you think you know people who were on the floors that were hit?
You just pray when they evacuated people. Unfortunately, they evacuated people both sides of the World Financial Center. I don't know if if you're talking talking about the other side. We were by the water, by the ferries and Morans in that area. You just hope the people on the other side, they've actually evacuated them out, and that's the fear, I guess, with this building here. You just see the fire, like 20 stories. You're worried about the building giving out, and it did.
How far away from the building were you when it collapsed?
I was right by where the people get on for the ferry, right next to Morans, to the right of Morans.
So, 10 blocks, 20 blocks?
10 blocks away, and then there was a decent crowd, and that's when everyone just dispersed.
All right. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. What's your name?
All right, Rick Leventhal.
Where are you from?
With Fox News Channel.
As Rick Leventhal continues to report from the streets of Manhattan, as this devastation occurs and continues to unfold, and you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, there is only one.
Can they hear?
There you're listening to the Fox News Channel, their coverage of the catastrophe. But I must say, and I hate to say this, but we had eyewitness reports earlier on that the World Trade Center being 110 stories high, there were people who were falling from the windows and who were jumping. Let's listen to this interview from Rick Leventhal.
We thought the building was going to topple over. It was going so.
Well, one of them did.
One of them did. We were in Tower 1. We made it out.
Well, you're a lucky man.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Take care.
Clearly, this is a nationwide catastrophe, but folks...
Rick Leventhal talking to several eyewitnesses down there. That looks like another gentleman.
Call your loved ones. If you have any other way, perhaps email. If you have any other way of contacting your
we're not listening to the interview on Fox News Channel, so we'll come back.
James, can I just step in 1 second? We do have reports that the State Department has been hit.
So virtually every important office building in Washington State, Treasury, too late for the Pentagon because the attack has already hit there, but that is being evacuated as well.
And we should mention that the New York City Fire Department is appealing to anyone who's off duty or on vacation. Please, if you're a fire person, please report to work immediately. They need your help. Obviously, after we saw the planes hit the building, we kind of thought everything was over. It's not over. The one tower has collapsed. People on the ground are getting hurt, if not killed. The story just seems not to be anywhere near ending.
Well, listen to this.
Flying out of the sky and you can't do nothing about it. You tell me. You tell me what you think. I mean, my heart's in my mouth. I mean, I pray for these people. There's no words to describe what's going on out there. I mean, you see bodies just coming a half hour later, still coming out of the goddamn sky. Devastating. Devastating. I can't imagine anything worse than this. There's got to be... I can't imagine. Everybody on the plane must have died. The floor, I got friends of mine on 104th floor, friends on other buildings. I just spoke to one of my friends a half hour prior to that, getting ready to go upstairs to go to work. It's devastating. I mean, I've seen a lot of construction accidents. I've seen a lot of bad things happen. Never seen a jet fall out of the sky into a building, no less once, but twice. Devastating.
I want to bring into the conversation...
we'll just add to what that gentleman said, that there is reason to feel that way because he mentioned that the plane must have been fully occupied. We're told that there were 158 passengers and a crew of 9 or 10 aboard that plane, so that's just for openers, the number of people killed. And again, we've had eyewitnesses telling us that people were falling from the upper floors, were jumping out the upper floors in apparent panic. So it is, by any stretch of the imagination, a terrible, terrible tragedy. We're also told that an organization that calls itself the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine is claiming responsibility.
Now, do you wonder if they have any connection to Osama bin Laden? I've heard that they don't.
I don't know.
I don't know
if
that's been confirmed. Right.
Have you heard?
I've never heard of that outfit before either, but I wonder if they have any...
Front for it, yes.
Right.
No, the name is familiar. I have heard the name mentioned before.
But I believe they don't have any connection to Osama
bin Laden.
But you know what? This is all unconfirmed right now. I think what goes through your mind is, how did this slip past the FBI? How did this slip past the FBI? With all these different attacks in 2 different states, maybe our expert here...
The FBI, what does the CIA do?
The question you raised before we went off and saw some of the interviews was, would they be criticized for it? And the answer is, hindsight's always wonderful to say what we should have done, and probably they and other intelligence gatherers will be criticized. What you have to do, if you want to stop this, what you really have to do is infiltrate these organizations very early on. You can't put somebody in once it happens. You have to put them in, as the city police did years and years ago, and let them come up through the ranks. And that was stopped. Courts said you can't do that because we have to protect rights, and we don't do it. And what we have to now rethink and rebalance is what kind of restrictions we're going to suffer, which we have to in order to stop this. You can't take a person or stop a person from committing suicide. That gets proved in all over the Mideast every day of the week now, it seems. But we ought to be able to better restrict and better confront the people who are causing this, and we're not doing that.
Well, short of changing the Constitution, how do you go about it?
Well, you don't have to violate the Constitution necessarily to find out what people are doing. There's a right of privacy and there's an expectation of privacy, but that doesn't mean you can't have people infiltrate the groups. It means you're going to have to spend a considerable amount of time, effort, manpower, womanpower getting into these groups and gathering intelligence. And it means you're going to have to give up some of the things that the Constitution may or may not protect, but you need to do in order to protect people.
A friend of mine works for the FBI. He's, you know, out in the field. He's an agent. And he tells me all the time that he's on surveillance outside people's houses who are known terrorists or possible terrorists. And they're constantly watching these people. So what I'm asking again is, how did this slip by? I mean, we can say, you know, 20/20 hindsight, but this was obviously a synchronized planned attack on 2 states.
But are they watching the people in this country or the people in other
countries? Oh,
countries?
my goodness, look at the screen.
Goodness.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
Both towers down.
Oh, my God.
I hope they evacuated everybody out of that area because...
Covered in smoke. In the world's history, the smoke and debris from this collapse undoubtedly causing yet more mayhem, more death, more destruction. The smoke and debris spread through the streets.
You're hearing unedited live sounds from the scene of that crash. The collapse of the tallest building in New York.
One of the great symbols of New York, if not this country, if not the world, forever erased from our memory.
No, I think it will always be in our memory, that's for sure, but definitely erased from our skies. This is just unbelievable.
A live picture from Chopper 5 showing the collapse of the World Trade Center.
What do we do now? Mr. Jaffe, but what do we do now? You said I shouldn't be angry, maybe I shouldn't, but I am very, very angry by this, and we shouldn't let it shut us down.
No.
But this is a tremendous impact on our lives. Where do we go from here? What should we do? How do we respond?
I think we take a very deliberate course of action, which may take a week, a month, a year, where we start to put ourselves on track to understand that we are the target in a war, and we have to fight it, which means we have to make sacrifices to protect ourselves while we go on. And we have to dedicate some resources that we haven't so that this type of thing doesn't.
This picture is surreal. It almost looks like we're frozen in time.
This is what we have dreaded forever. We went through 40 years after the war with our not having any real domestic violence. And now it's caught us. And now we have to put ourselves in a position.
And I understand, Mr. Jaffe, that this tragedy has not ended yet, because the Capitol Police in Washington are now reporting that a plane has been hijacked, and they fear it is heading toward the Capitol building in Washington, which, as we have reported, has been evacuated, but yet another clear symbol of our country and our government and our way of life.
You also have to wonder all the police personnel and fire department who were called to Lower Manhattan to help the people in the Trade Center. Let's hope they're okay now, too, with this collapse of the tower.
Yes, indeed. There were, I'm sure, plenty of rescue workers who were in and around that building. And with that collapse, I'm sure...
What about the command center?
More
the command
devastation.
center.
The command center is, I think, in Tower 5 of the World Trade Center. And there's no way of telling whether that's intact. One would suspect that looking at that picture there, that live picture, that the command center is not in very good shape either.
And you have to wonder just how far this reached. I mean, you're talking about Wall Street is nearby, you know, a place that the world looks to.
Like the gentleman who said that the Marriott didn't
the
appear to be there.
History, yeah. Well, he had his vantage point was around by the financial center there, which is ironically built on the. They're talking to me in my ear. All right, this is we have tape. I understand a few minutes ago. This is the collapse as viewed from the ground. That picture just a few moments ago, you heard the people reacting in terror and horror as the World Trade Center simply collapsed. And apparently it is not over. Again, to repeat, we have a report from the Capitol Police that another plane has been hijacked, and they are afraid that that plane is heading for the Capitol building, which along with any other important building in Washington has been evacuated. And just to tell you, if you're outside the island of Manhattan, don't try to come in today. There's no way you can get in, and people are streaming out as quickly as possible.
Well, I believe bridges and tunnels have all been closed, and certainly any subway station that goes to the World Trade Center.
Does that mean, as well, I would guess that anybody who is in Manhattan now
will be walking, if they can.
Yeah, Dick Oliver reported from near the Brooklyn Bridge before that that people were streaming across the bridge toward Brooklyn, but nobody coming back in.
I'm surprised that the Brooklyn Bridge has not been closed.
I think.
Well, maybe to pedestrians, you know.
I'm sure that they closed the Midtown Tunnel and they closed the other bridges across the East River, and of course the Hudson River crossings as well. And again, to repeat, there is no plane taking off in America today as a consequence of this unbelievable terrorist act. Mario Bosques has gone to Beth Israel Hospital downtown. Mario, are you there? All right, Mario, at Beth Israel Hospital downtown, where some of the victims of this terrible tragedy are being taken, you would imagine that, my goodness, the carnage must be unbelievable. Deaths may number in the thousands. I mean, the World Trade Center is the largest office building in this city, simply collapsed. You feared to even make an attempt at defining the enormity of this tragedy.
I mean, not only the people in the tower, the people on the ground now you have to be concerned about.
Sure, as you mentioned before, rescue workers there when the building collapsed some time after the initial crash.
And I know my husband, who was like a few blocks away from there, was told around 9:15 to evacuate. I hope he got the heck out of there and came home on his way home.
Rosanna, your colleague in the evening, John Rowland, is down in the newsroom right now talking about what's happening in Washington. John?
Yes, good afternoon, Jim. Trying to drink all of this in as you are. The enormity of this, of course, is beyond anybody in this business in this entire city. We've never in our lives seen anything even remotely approaching this. The latest information we have out of Washington from the State Department is that is being evacuated, the White House being evacuated. The Pentagon, of course, has already been attacked, as you've already been reporting. And there is word now that there is another hijacked plane possibly on its way to Washington. What the target there is, obviously we don't know, and we don't know what's being done to prevent any other sort of attack like that, other than every plane in the United States has been grounded. As you've been reporting, there are no planes allowed to take off. Virtually, we are at a standstill in this country right now, thanks to this terrorism attack. Both towers, the World Trade Center, both of them collapsed. God knows how many people were killed or injured then. And of course, then you had the people on the planes themselves. Those people, of course, died. So again, the State Department is saying that they are evacuating much of Washington. Is the public buildings there being evacuated. Here in the city, the entire lower Manhattan, as you can see right there, the incredible devastation of both of those buildings collapsed. Goodness knows around them. There are an awful lot of firefighters, awful lot of police officers down there working at the time when those buildings went down, the people inside, the people around them. One can only hope that as many people as possible were evacuated and had gotten out of there. We've been trying to find out exactly what's going on with the city personnel who were in the command center down at the World Trade Center. There's a command center down there, and we don't really know what's happened to that, as far as I've been told. If anybody in the building who is on my IFB who knows any more information about that or sees any more, please tell me, because that's a very important part of this entire effort, to try to coordinate life-saving and efforts to get people out of there. And we don't exactly know what's going on in that department, other than an awful lot of people are risking their lives right at this moment to try to save others. But as you can imagine, that's like a war zone down there. You'd have to be prepared with oxygen and everything else to be able to see through that, to get through that, to get people out of there.
One of our field producers is at NYU Medical, and there was some type of explosion. She can't confirm.
NYU Medical Center,
yes,
there's been an explosion?
Said, she and our reporter have debris on them. That's all I know, and the phone, she hung up. She's going to try to call the information.
So we have another report now of another, not an airplane, just some kind of a bomb went off at NYU Medical Center. So whatever is going on here is very, very coordinated. We would ask you and urge you, stay home, stay calm, don't panic, don't worry about anything. You're in the hands of the best life-saving, the police department, the firefighters in the city, best in the world. So a plane, we're told now that a plane went down in Pennsylvania, but we don't know anything much more than that a plane went down in Pennsylvania. We don't know where, and we don't know exactly what happened on that. But we will keep checking. As you can imagine, the news is flooding into us, and we are trying to get out to you best we can, bits and pieces. But again, I would just urge you, stay calm.
All right, John, let me interrupt you if I may, because yes, we have a further development. We're told now that from people in Washington that the Pentagon has undergone a partial collapse. As we've been telling you, the Pentagon was the third location struck by terrorists, and we understand that the Pentagon has collapsed at least partially. Mike Emanuel, are you there?
Yes, I am.
What can you tell us about this latest development?
It's just been a crazy day here in Washington. I mean, it's one of those days where you run in one direction, hearing news breaking in one area, and then it seems like something's happening in a different area. We can tell you that apparently a jet has crashed into the Pentagon. Personnel in that immediate area have been evacuated. There have been some reports that possibly another plane may be heading in that direction. Again, it's breaking news, so details have been kind of sketchy, but we can tell you the United States Capitol has been evacuated. The West Wing of the White House has been evacuated. There are reports of a possible car bombing outside the State Department here in Washington, D.C., so it's been a wild news day here in the nation's capital, as it has been in your city. And so emergency crews are scrambling everywhere. And we can tell you veterans of Washington, D.C. have said for the first time they can ever remember they've seen military planes flying over Washington, D.C., patrolling the skies after the Pentagon was hit. Eyewitnesses saying that they believe it was a U.S. Airways plane that came in low over the city, hitting a portion of the Pentagon. We have not gotten any numbers in terms of injured or possible fatalities, but we will get you those as soon as possible. But simply a crazy day here in Washington, as it has been in New York.
Mike, do you know anything about a report that we have here in New York that, according to the Capitol Police, a hijacked plane is en route to Washington now?
We've heard that report as well, and then we've also heard people saying that that is not so, that that's an erroneous report. We're trying to get to the bottom of it, but as you can understand with a situation like this, there's all kinds of information flowing around. It's kind of hard to confirm what is absolutely accurate and what is not. We can tell you we've heard that, and we're checking it out.
We also heard that the Pentagon building itself at least partially collapsed. Do you know anything about that?
We've heard that as well, that perhaps the southern portion of the Pentagon, part of that has come down. Have not got numbers in terms of who may have been injured or killed, but we can tell you it's an unbelievable scene here in Washington, something that none of us ever thought we would see, as I'm sure people in your city never imagined to see either.
We can say the same thing here, John. Mike, that's for sure. Again, first the World Trade Center, one tower was hit by a plane, then another tower hit by a plane. Then we got word that the Pentagon was hit in Washington, and then the World Trade Centers collapsed in Lower Manhattan. John Rowland's down in the newsroom. John?
Well, Jim, I don't have much for you. I just have some sketchy information here that another explosion, a fourth explosion out the World Trade Center has gone off. One doesn't know if that's an ancillary thing because of what already happened or an additional explosion of some kind outside of that. There's also been a plane that has crashed in western Pennsylvania. A large plane crashes in western Pennsylvania. Officials at Somerset County Airport confirmed. That's right off the wire copy. Don't know if that's connected to what's going on. The Rodino Federal Building in Newark, that's been closed. All the workers there have been told to go home. Not necessarily because of a direct threat. They've just been told to go home to get out of there, obviously clearing out any federal, state, city, and local office buildings. Jim, that's the latest we have from here.
All right, John, I imagine, given the fact I'm hearing word from the studio. Okay, I'm told all federal office buildings in Washington have been evacuated. I would imagine, given the fact that we have Oklahoma City in our past, that federal buildings all over the country would be, just to be on the safe side, would be
Jim, you have to wonder where the president is right now and where Mayor Giuliani is right now.
When we last saw the president, he had just taken off in Air Force One en route back to Washington. So he presumably is still in the air en route back to Washington. However, good question as far as Mayor Giuliani is concerned. One hopes that nothing untoward happened to the mayor.
Right, because wasn't he going to hold a press conference?
If he was down in that World Trade Center, perhaps we hope nothing personally happened to the mayor physically, but maybe that communications down there were wiped out by the crashes.
You know, they were saying that one of the planes, they believe, was hijacked from Boston, and in some of the things that I'm reading through here on the wire service, it says the second plane may have flown out of Newark, New Jersey, but that has not been confirmed. But Joe Kleins has just gotten up into the studio, the executive producer of the 10 o'clock news.
Yes. Okay, he'll be here in a second, but I just want to tell you the Board of Elections has just announced the primary has been canceled.
Has been canceled.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Here's Joe right now.
Kleins, you look a bit the worse for wear. You've been running around this morning, obviously.
Yeah, they're not letting. I'm coming in from Long Island. They're not letting anything but real extreme emergency vehicles over the 59th Street Bridge. Thousands of people are walking across to and fro. I was on the bridge when I believe the second tower may have crumbled, and people were just standing in shock. I mean, everybody's jaw just dropped, absolutely open. There's, you know, New York, everybody has to go someplace, and people are going places. But everybody has a dazed look on their face. It's amazing because, you know, if you walk, we're near 2nd Avenue here on the Upper East Side. You look down, it's many miles away, but people are still looking down the road, seeing this amazing, horrific display.
Now, you were able to see it from the bridge, were you?
I saw it right as somebody said, "Oh my God!" There was a second, apparently the second tower. I was in the car listening on the radio when the first tower crumbled. It's just, it's amazing, and everybody's just. You know, you can't put it into words. Shock, horror. You know, this really. I mean, instantly, people are looking at it and know that this is. You know, we're never going to be the same after something like this.
It's curious how you even got here.
There's a parking garage at Queens Plaza that I often use. You know, the traffic was very heavy. I ditched there and then I ran across the bridge, and a lot of people are running and you know, just coming back and forth. It really is an amazing sight.
All right, Joe, just 1 second, please. We're going to go back to Washington now, where Fox reporter Mike Emanuel has an update for us there. Mike?
Yes, Jim, I can tell you that it's a U.S. Air 737 that crashed into the Pentagon earlier this morning. Much of the Pentagon has now been evacuated. There are still some personnel in the basement of the Pentagon in a bunker-type facility, and basically it is designed to stand through an attack, but we can confirm that it was a U.S. Air 737 which crashed into the Pentagon here in Washington earlier this morning, and there are fire crews from all over the greater metropolitan Washington area fighting the fire in that area. I can tell you I'm a good distance from there. I can see smoke coming from that building. But I am not actually at the Pentagon to tell you exactly how bad the fire is, but it looks like it's pretty sizable at this point.
So these are not little Lear jets we're talking about. We're talking about big, huge commercial jets.
You're absolutely correct. It sounds similar to the situation that you guys had in New York, a commercial jet possibly hijacked or possibly vandalized, so it ended up crashing and hitting the area around the Pentagon. We do not have numbers in terms of injuries or possible fatalities, but we are able to confirm that it was indeed a commercial 737 U.S. Air, we are told by officials on the scene, that crashed into the Pentagon this morning. But Pentagon officials the National Command Center at the Pentagon is still working. The rest of the building, though, has been evacuated. We're understanding a lot of the damage is to the outer ring of the Pentagon. And some of our people on the scene say it doesn't seem to be severe, but there does seem to be a pretty good fire going, at least on the outside of the Pentagon.
Yeah, we're looking at your live picture right now, Mike, and that would seem to underscore that comment because we see huge clouds of smoke billowing out of the Pentagon building.
Indeed.
Thank you, Mike, very much.
Sure.
Joe Kleins, back to you. When you saw the collapse of the building, were there people around you, and if so, what was the reaction on the part of the crowd?
They were, because there were a bunch of people who were on the bridge, standing and watching, and when they saw it, they said, "Oh my God, the whole building just went over." Because at that point, beforehand, you couldn't really tell what had happened to the first tower because there's just so much smoke that you just see smoke and one tower, and then all you saw was smoke after that. Smoke over all of Lower Manhattan, enveloping all of the financial district, going over the East River. And, as I was driving in, I was hearing reports of people saying papers were flying over Brooklyn. This is an hour ago. So I can imagine what, this tremendous calamity. But people, the parking garage where I parked in Queens, it's at Queens Plaza. It provides, usually a lovely view of the World Trade Center. People, just dozens and dozens of people were running upstairs as I was running downstairs to try to get a view of this. I was running downstairs to the subway. Subway is a little bit of a chaotic mess. Most of the trains are not running into Manhattan right now. And so you got a lot of people on the platforms wondering what's going on. People are trying to make calls from payphones and they're not getting through, and
cell phones aren't working. Did you try yours?
I saw a lot of people on cell phones. I mean, I think it's very hit or miss. It's very hit or miss. Some people were talking intently. Everybody's talking about this. I mean, nobody's...
I mean, New Yorkers were a tough bunch, but even this has brought the city almost to a standstill, if not a standstill.
Sure. I mean, we're on the Upper East Side, as I was saying before, but there are people, I mean, yes, they're walking with shopping bags and stuff, but there's, everybody's kind of,
Just a daze.
A daze,
yeah.
absolutely. That's the best way to put it. Nobody knows quite what to make of this.
And look at the symbolism of this whole attack on primary day. A very, very important day in our country.
Sure.
And they attack some of the most important symbols in our country, the World Trade Center, the Pentagon.
At least in our city and locally anyway. But Barbara Nevins from UPN 9, our sister station, I don't think Barbara can hear me, but go ahead, Barbara. Tell us what you can see from your point.
I've been down here since a little after 9 o'clock, and every time I thought it could not get worse, it has. I was very close to the World Trade Center, right underneath the North Tower at Barclay in Washington. You could see debris falling from it like sparkles. People were in the windows waving white flags trying to get out, and then suddenly people started to jump. The jumpers began a little after 9:30 and continued way up until 10 o'clock. At about 10 o'clock there was a man about 5 stories from the top of the building waving a white flag from the corner on the west side of the building. A helicopter came close, and then suddenly police officers I was standing with said, "Run, run, the building is collapsing." Actually, I don't know if the helicopter bombed the building at that point or crashed into it, if that was a third attack. However, parts of the building, big chunks of the building began to collapse. Everybody ran back from the street. We were just 1 block north of the World Trade Tower at that point. We moved back ran back. People were running, people were crying, people were saying that their friends were trapped in the building. We're back now at about Chambers and Greenwich Streets, and suddenly more people start jumping. There were at least 5, 6 bodies just jumping, and people were gasping in the crowd saying, please, please, please. They did want to see these people jump. They did want them to jump. Others were saying, what can they do? It's a choice between burning alive and jumping. It was really, truly one of the most horrible things that I have ever seen. We started to move back. We walked 10 blocks, and then suddenly, big North Tower seemed to rumble. We looked back. There was white smoke and sparkles, and the building was collapsing. People in the streets were running. We had been right there, right under the building. This is really, truly one of the most horrible things that I have ever seen. Back to you in the studio. We'll be here all day trying to report, to tell you what's been going on.
Barbara Evans-Taylor from UPN 9 News, our sister station, reporting the devastation that she saw from her vantage point. Joe?
Jim, getting back to what Rosanna was saying, the World Trade Center, everybody in this city knows somebody who works there.
That's right.
And many of those people who were involved in this calamity today were there in 1993 when the terrorists tried to take down the towers. You know, in some way, you think maybe that attack gave people a false sense of security, knowing that at that time those 2 towers stayed.
But also, would they ever strike it again? I mean, to go back again and hit the World Trade Center.
Well, let's ask our expert about that. Does that surprise you that they would choose the same target again, Joe?
No. I mean, they did it then. They did it to make a point, and now they've made their point. They've destroyed it completely. Now we've got to be careful, and now we have to be at a stage where we start to be much more careful of what we do and how we do it, and we have to start to look at these people who are involved in it. We'll give up some of our liberties, but we'll protect ourselves much better.
We've got to worry about all those people down in Lower Manhattan who, I mean, you know, from the pictures that we see, it's just covered in smoke. It's just billowing out and billowing out. It doesn't seem to end. I mean, how can you fight a fire? How can you rescue people in that area? I mean, I don't think they could have been prepared for that.
Well, I think the only way they could have prepared for it is by, as you mentioned earlier, Joe, by infiltration of these organizations and somehow getting word that this was going to happen. But apparently, every indication so far, we were just simply sandbagged by this, blindsided.
Absolutely.
And what we have to do now is 2 things. One, aside from putting ourselves together and remaining calm and not a total panic, start to resurrect what we have, but then start to institute some type of control and some care. Hopefully the president's plane will be escorted, because who knows what other hijacked plane could fly at Air Force One. Hopefully they'll be careful. But this is a day. It's not a week or a month. After this day, we'll regroup. And we have to start to be much more careful and more prepared.
Put yourself in the position now. You're in the business. You're a pro. Put yourself in the business of the guys who have to make decisions now when they're sitting down. What do they do? What's the first step the people responsible for reacting to this tragedy take?
Well, I think the first step you take is to protect the people and the sources and resources that you have, that you need. The president, the major offices, the office holders. And then you start to regroup, and then you start to gather. I mean, you have to do a number of things at the same time. You have to keep the country going. You have to protect the major people who are involved in the country. And then you have to start to figure out how this happened, how you're going to catch the people that did it, and how you're going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Heightened vigilance is something you're really going to have to do, and you're going to have to do it very, very quickly.
That was one of the first things when we heard the president speak this morning. He says, we will go after these people. We will get these people. But how many times in the past have we heard these same words?
Well, we've heard them, and they have, in fact, identified people who've been responsible for major problems, whether it's the World Trade Center bombing in '93, whether it's the coal incident. We know who's involved. That will get them. I think that message tells the country, don't worry, we're going to have a heightened effect. But I think it's much more important, or equally important, to say to the country, we will go forward, we will keep ourselves intact, we will not be immobilized by this. The financial district's immobilized, as Joe said, because of what's happened there. It'll get cleaned up and it'll go forward again. That's the more important thing. You have to do all those things at once.
Would you say we are officially at war now?
No, that's not for me to say. I think we are officially now initiated in domestic violence in the United States apparently from outside sources or inside sources in a way we never believed was possible before, in a way that people said could happen and we said no, it wouldn't. And while we had skirmishes in World War II and we had submarine incidents in World War II and we had sabotage in World War II, from that time to the present, notwithstanding the World Trade Center incident in '93, we never really had devastation. Today we're exposed to having real devastation.
Primary day will never be the same again in this city, in this country.
Which, I must say that one of the issues in the mayoral campaign was the security around City Hall, closing off City Hall to the public. And I must say I was one of the people who said that that's a terrible thing to do. I'm not sure anymore.
It makes you, sit back and think. I have a question, though, for you, to Mr. Jaffe. You say we need to go in and infiltrate these organizations and get these people. And you sit back and you, even as a journalist myself, I have to say, you sit back, you watch coverage of a reporter getting in to interview the likes of Osama bin Laden, but the United States can't find him to get him.
Right.
That presents a real problem. You look at that and you say, well, what?
I can't tell you I have the inside track on any of that, and it may well be that people know where he could be, and it may well be that the government's not in a position to react to that. There are a lot of things that interact, and reporters frequently can get sources, raise a different issue, if you would. If you have the sources and you have the internal
why don't you
control,
turn them over?
Are you willing to turn them over? And that's a whole different issue, which we may regrettably have to start to rethink at this juncture.
John Rowland is down in the newsroom. John?
All right, thanks, Jim. Just a couple of things. Number one, and perhaps the very most important thing I'm going to say to you today, is that an awful lot of people need an awful lot of help, and that means blood. So if it's possible, if you're able to go to your nearest blood bank, do so. Go and donate blood. An awful lot of it is needed. Now, the nearest one in the neighborhood of Channel 5, where we are, is at 67th Street, right off of 2nd Avenue. We're going to try to get up a phone number for you for the different blood banks around. Perhaps there's an 800 number for all of them. Otherwise, we'll try to get as many ones as we can for you locally. So if you can, please donate blood. Number two, we said earlier there was an explosion at the NYU Medical Center. That turns out not to be true. There was not an explosion at the NYU Medical Center. Number three, the election is canceled for today for obvious reasons. There will be no primary today. That is canceled. No word on when it will be rescheduled. Arafat, Yasser Arafat, has condemned these attacks. We're told that he has come out just recently and condemned these attacks. Israel has evacuated all of her embassies around the world. All of Israel's embassies have been evacuated around the world. Back here in our country, a plane, possibly a 767, that's a large plane, has gone down in Pennsylvania, about 80 miles southeast of Pittsburgh. We don't know if that is related to what is going on. In Connecticut, all the state and government buildings there are being evacuated just as a precaution. We don't have any information out of Connecticut other than this is just being done as a precaution. In Newark, the same thing is happening. The Rodino government building there has been evacuated. Again, the primary has been called off. Yasser Arafat has condemned these attacks. Israel has evacuated all of her embassies around the world for now. That's the latest information, Jim, that we have for you from here.
All right, John, you mentioned the importance of donating blood, and you mentioned that one of the blood centers was very close to us here in Channel 5, and we have in our studio right now Michael Washington from the Red Cross. Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, you're just down the block from us here. First of all, if folks want to donate blood to help in the aftermath of this tragedy, what's the number to call?
They should go and call 1-800-933-BLOOD, and that's presuming that the phone lines work. And I'm sure that the phone lines will be overwhelmed, so I would just ask everybody to be patient with the process. They can also go directly to a blood center. The nearest blood center, as mentioned before, is right here at 67th, just off of 2nd Avenue.
Do you know a few other places? Maybe you can mention them so
well,
this way.
The other places that are going to be open is at 150 Amsterdam Avenue, which is in the west side. We're also in the process of opening Columbia Presbyterian's Medical Center, which is at 168th and Broadway. And I believe we're in the process of also opening 53rd and Lex, which is in the City Court building.
Mike, do you have any places outside the city, in Queens, Brooklyn?
In Brooklyn, we have a facility in downtown Brooklyn at 120 Lawrence Street. And then we have facilities in New Jersey and also on Long Island. And if you go to the website, which is nybloodcenter.org, and you can find all of those locations.
So nybloodcenter.org. Okay,
Right.
that's presuming that the internet's still up.
That's right.
Haven't
And
heard any
it
word
should
on
be
that.
known that right now we have a good fair amount of blood to handle this emergency. We've also been in contact with other agencies to assist us in bringing blood in from other locations. So we're in good shape. We don't by any means want to start a panic, but we would like everyone that can assist to assist.
Any particular type of blood that's more necessary than others?
People with O type and B would be the types that we would need the most at this particular moment.
And if you have a cold and stuff, should you not even bother?
Right.
Or?
If you have a cold, don't bother to donate. But otherwise, if you're healthy and you're between the ages of 18 and 65 or 17 and 65, please come down and donate.
All right, Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael Washington. Give us that number once again, the 1-800 number.
1-800-933-BLOOD, and you can go to the website for locations, which is nybloodcenter.org.
Okay, again, nybloodcenter.org.
Yes.
All right, Michael, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
And of course, the need for blood results from that terrible, terrible catastrophe you're looking at right now. There's the aftermath. Those clouds are what is left of the World Trade Center. Just before 9 o'clock this morning, a plane crashed into the side of 2 World Trade Center. Then minutes later, another plane crashed into the other tower. There is a live picture of that. I'm sorry, there is a taped picture of that second plane crashing into the other tower of the World Trade Center. And then shortly after that, in Washington, another plane, all 3 of them hijacked apparently. Another plane crashed into the Pentagon building in Washington, into this nation's military complex, the military nerve center of our country. President Bush was in Florida. He immediately boarded Air Force One and headed for Washington. He will be returning there very shortly. And a terrible 1, 2, 3 terrorist attack on our country has taken place this morning. We have not yet heard from Mayor Giuliani since this started. We heard at one point that the mayor would be holding a news conference as soon as possible. We are concerned because the mayor's
emergency people.
His emergency bunker, they
his
call
lifeline
it, is in, I think, Tower 5 of the World Trade Center, which is very close to ground zero. So presumably their communications have been knocked out, and we certainly hope that the mayor or any of his emergency personnel have not been injured. Dick Oliver was down at City Hall covering what seems like a decade ago, the primary election, when the story broke. Ollie?
Yes, Jim. We're now down at NYU Downtown Hospital, the old Beekman Downtown Hospital. I was heading here to try to get a look at what kind of injuries were coming in when I don't know what it was, but it was a huge sound. I think it was the facade of the building falling. After that, literally thousands of people came roaring down the streets, many of them fully in panic, shrieking and screaming, heading towards the hospital. The hospital immediately opened its doors and to get as many people as it could into the lobby and hallways and other areas, and immediately handed out surgical masks and water, and began treating people, some for cardiac cases, many others for breathing problems. Jim, it's very difficult to explain, but imagine a snowstorm of, say, 5 inches. The streets are covered, the cars are covered with this gray-white soot that unfortunately people are being forced to breathe. It is severely affecting people here. As far as the trauma cases being brought here by ambulance, there are all kinds of cases ranging from broken bones to trauma to heart cases, to cardiac cases, to lung cases. The hospital is overwhelmed, but handling everyone who comes here. Do you have any questions at this point, Jim?
I don't, Ollie. Just stay there. I know you're doing a yeoman's job down there, so thank you very much, and we'll get back to you very shortly. Right now, we're going to go to UPN 9's Barbara Nevins-Taylor, our sister station. She is reporting once again live from the scene. Barbara?
Hi, this is Barbara Nevins Taylor. I'm at the corner of Broome and 6th Avenue. We're north of what were the World Trade Towers. We have seen them collapse. I'm here with Dawn Michaels. She was coming out of the subway, going to work from her home in Far Rockaway. She got out at Chambers Street. And Dawn, what did you see?
Well, as I was walking down the street, I happened to hear like an engine sound, and the plane was like, as if it was going really fast, and I didn't think of anything, so I kept on walking. All of a sudden, you heard a loud explosion, so we all ran to look, and the first building was a big hole on the side of it, and on the other side went in flames. So we stood there in shock, everyone screaming. A woman collapsed on me. I had to lay her down on my textbooks, and then before you know it, out of nowhere, the next building blew up. And then all of a sudden, everyone's running all over the place, the panic attack. Then after a few while later, all of a sudden, people are running hysterical, and we go to look, and the building collapsed. So we're running, and we're trying to run against...
That's a long time later that the building collapsed. People have been running all morning. Yeah. That's the really shocking thing, is that people have been moving back from the World Trade Towers all morning. Just when you thought you might be safe, suddenly you were no longer safe because another portion of the building started to explode or fell off, and then the towers actually collapsed. You were also here very early in the